I'm Rae.
And I'm Derek.
We're married.
And we love movies.
So we decided to take on an iconic genre
that we aren't experts in. Slashers!
Join us every other week
as we dive into horror.
This is
Lovin' Slashers.
Hello, everyone. Hello.
Hi.
Hello, Derek. How are you?
I'm doing just fine.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You're looking fine.
Oh, that's so sweet. Too bad nobody can see us. The beauty of podcasting.
The most handsome man ever.
And then you'll know that's not me. So you've eliminated one. Because that's Chris Pine.
That wasn't my goal. But Chris Pine is rather handsome.
He's up there. I don't know that he's number one because I'm not my thing, but you do you. So
that's not where I thought we were gonna start, but I love it. That's great.
Fine. It's fine. Just roll with it.
Yeah, totally. So huge announcement for our podcast.
Oh,
absolutely! Like critical, mind blowing. I got us matching notebooks.
You did?
Yeah. Not really an announcement or huge, but I just wanted to share because it's cute.
And we put little horror-themed stickers all over them?
Yeah, I've got like bloody handprints and one of each of our serial killers.
Yeah, it's great. I've got some other stuff that's just horror-related that's not necessarily slasher-related that's still really fun. And
I'm digging your bombshell bride. And that's Bride of Frankenstein.
Oh, yeah, the Bride of Frankenstein on the cover. Yeah, she's across from the Jennifer Tilly Chucky doll.
Fantastic.
Which is just awesome.
Tiffany.
Yes, Tiffany, that's her name.
Yes.
It's been a while since I've seen Bride of Chucky. So,
I
know. But yeah, there's some fun stuff on here. I've got Mike Myers on the front with a Jason mask with the knife through one of the eyes. Yeah. And of course, I've got Christian Bale from American Psycho, his blood-splattered face, which is not really a slasher movie per se, but
he's definitely a serial killer.
Yeah.
And for the most part, he doesn't use guns, so I guess it would fall under slasher.
He does slash.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. Anyway,
cute matching notebooks.
Yeah.
Makes us feel a little more official and coupley. It's adorable.
No, it's great.
Yeah.
That's why all of my notes tonight are prepared on my tablet.
Well, you had a very busy day of watching football.
I did.
Yeah.
I did. It's true. It's that time of year, folks. Football and pumpkin spice.
And slasher films.
I'm very happy. Okay, so we are talking about a horror movie.
We are. So we're talking about Friday the 13th.
The 1980, the original Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Well, the reboot, the 2009 reboot has the same title. So
that's totally fair. Like, we're doing them chronologically through the order of the franchises. We're if you didn't catch our intro or episode 0 or our first episode, that's what's going on. So gonna do Halloween, the Jason franchise, and the Freddy franchises all kind of concordiantly. I said that wrong.
That's an interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we're doing the first one of
coordinated,
each.
Yes.
Then we'll do the second one of each, and so on until one obviously will run out, and then we'll continue on. So we've done Halloween.
Yes.
That was episode 1.
Yeah.
And this is episode 2. So episode 3 will be the first Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, and we talked about doing the Child's Play and the Scream franchise also mixed together like that as well.
Yeah, after these 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, movie was directed by Sean S. Cunningham, written by Victor Miller and Ron Kurz. It's got a big cast of people that include Kevin Bacon and Betsy Palmer.
Kevin Bacon is our big breakout from this. Like, his career obviously just takes off from this movie, not really known prior to that. Whereas Betsy Palmer was like a huge surprise. Her reveal at the end is what makes this movie stand out, in my opinion.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess spoiler alert for 1980s Friday the 13th. But do we need to do spoiler warnings on these? I don't know.
Guys, all these movies are at least 30 years old, if not older.
Well, not later. Once we get to episode like 30-ish, you know.
Fine. At episode 30, we'll start doing spoiler warnings.
Wow, okay. Yeah. I might slip them in from time to time.
And he edits, so
I do edit. That's true. I can come in from the future and yeah. But yeah, no. So Betsy Palmer did not want to do this movie.
Really?
When she got the script, she thought it was trash and had no interest in doing it. However, she hadn't done a movie in over 20 years and needed a new car and thought this movie was going to be so terrible that people would just forget about it. So no big deal. And she'd get her new car and life would move on. Obviously, the movie has stuck around. So that's your first fright fact of the evening here, is that Betsy Palmer didn't want to do it, but needed the cash.
More on that later, because I have opinions to say about Betsy Palmer.
Okay. We'll get there.
Yeah, what's your next fright fact?
All right, fright fact number 2. So this movie was actually shot at a real camp in New Jersey. Sorry, this is hard to say. I want to get it right. Camp Nobi Bosco.
Nobi Bosco.
Yep, that's the name of the camp. This is still open today. You can still attend this camp. It's a real camp, though now it includes kind of like exhibits, so to speak, from the franchise, right? They steered into that a little bit. But yeah, it's out there. You can go to campnobibosco.org and see all about it. And it's apparently in pretty good shape and everything like that. I saw reviews on Google as recently as 2 weeks ago.
So was it in good shape at the time? Like, was it being used?
I mean, it was being used. So the whole movie that's shot at the camp was all really the camp stuff, with the exception of the bathrooms. They did build the bathrooms as a set, but everything else was real usable camp stuff.
Man, that right there is how you straight up save yourself a ton of money, is sets.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the budget on this was $550,000. It made almost $40 million domestically and almost $60 million worldwide. So it made the budget back. But yeah, it was kind of a shoestring budget, $550,000, which for those who are curious, that's about the budget of Evil Dead 2. As a comparison. So
okay,
yeah, but yeah, the film was fully financed by one guy, Phil Scuderi, and he was convinced after seeing a one-pager ad in Variety on 4th of July weekend 1979. Our director Sean Cunningham took out this big one-page ad, and that was all that existed for the film. There was no script. There wasn't even like an outline for the script. Basically, Cunningham had to like figure it out after the movie was financed.
My God.
Yeah. Very, very kind of fly by the seat of your pants, which is kind of cool. And its original working title was Long Night at Camp Blood.
Really?
Which is not a bad title. I actually think that's a pretty decent title.
Yeah, I agree. Why did it get changed?
You know, I don't know. I don't know why they changed it. That's a good question. I think just because, Friday the 13th is kind of, 13 is an unlucky number and all of that. And the dates do work out. 1958 and 1980. June 13th was a Friday on both of those. So that does work out. But yeah, there you go. So a few fright facts. I've got plenty more that we can sprinkle in as we go. I do have one.
I love that.
I just have one I want to drop about the director, though, before we move on.
Please, because I'm not very familiar with him.
Yeah, so he actually got his start in porn.
Yes!
Yeah, he directed softcore porn. That's how
I was really hoping that he had, starred and then...
No, director. And he moved into horror earlier in the 70s when he worked with Wes Craven on Last House on the Left.
Nice.
So there you go. That's Sean S. Cunningham. He did go on to produce more in the franchise. He produced, not directed, but produced Jason Goes to Hell, Jason X, Freddy vs. Jason, the 2009 reboot Friday the 13th, and the 2017 video game. So he stayed kind of involved with the franchise.
Okay. Nothing wrong with that.
Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah.
So where do you want to continue on with this conversation? I got lots of fright facts here, but I don't want to take over. So.
No, it's totally fine. I've got my kill count, my boob count. Not
too hard to do in this one, but
no, it's not. Once again, it is just blatantly said that these people are being punished for sex. What?
I'm sorry. That's not what the movie is saying.
What?
Yeah.
No. Like, that's what Mrs. Voorhees is saying as she's killing them.
Well, sort of. She's really killing them for not paying attention to her boy, right?
Yeah.
Her boy, right? But Cunningham wanted to be very clear that this idea of, like, sinners must die concept was never his actual intention, and that this has kind of grown out organically from these types of films. Even John Carpenter in Halloween got similar things back and said that was never his intention either. It was just kind of teenagers being teenagers
and being caught off aware, because, like, you're not paying attention to your environment,
right,
when you're mid-coitus.
I mean, or at least trying to start it. Yeah, exactly. So that was not their intention. They're not being singled out as, for being the sinners or anything like that. I mean, that's kind of why, the Brenda character, I think, is the one, the cook that never makes it.
No, that's Annie.
That's Annie never makes it.
Annie never makes it.
Yeah. So she like, I mean, she doesn't do anything.
No.
Right. So I think there's like a misconception that got propagated later in slashers.
Don't get me wrong. You're absolutely right. Mrs. Voorhees, Pamela, she just flat out says that teenagers were too busy making love. And first of all, that line is ridiculous. And it's because I can't imagine somebody like her who's clearly just a little deranged, just a little, just murdering people, just
a tad,
deranged.
Okay.
Saying the phrase "making love," like, why wouldn't she say something so silly like, "Oh God, what were some of the older?"
Like fornicating?
Yes, copulating.
I think fornicating would have worked. Because that tended to be the very judgy term that people would use.
Right, it is. It's very judgy.
I had a ex-girlfriend's dad use that term toward me.
You have to tell the story.
So, do I?
Tell the story.
Okay, so I was dating this girl. We had been together for a long time. We were living together and things like that. And we were at like this concert or whatever, and her mom overheard a conversation I was having with a buddy of mine who we used to be roommates together and everything like that. And she thought we were talking about me and her daughter. We weren't. But a couple days later, her father called me into his office. I had to go into his where he worked. To tell me that, he doesn't want me fornicating his daughter.
Fornicating his daughter. That's not how you use that word, sir.
Yeah, we were in our 20s, so, whatever. But yeah, so the moral of the story here, though, is that was never really the intention. And I think when the movie starts in 1958, these are like camp counselors in the middle of nowhere in 1958, like, there's not a whole lot to do. Right. It's not like there's television and, for them and movies to pop in and like stuff. There's no video games or anything like that.
They weren't even that far along either, poor kids.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I don't think anybody was really doing much yet when that happened. So.
It wasn't like the opening sex scene in Halloween where the guy is literally in and out.
In less than 90 seconds.
Than 90 seconds.
Yeah. So I think this is just like an organically created trope that then became part of slashers later.
Sure.
So I just want to throw that out there.
I appreciate that. That's a really good fun fact.
And I want to apologize in advance that I'm going to get all these kids' names wrong. Because
I'm going to correct you.
I can't keep any of them straight.
There was a lot of kids,
and they all have like a single, name, a single syllable name, and they're just kind of interchangeable for the most part. So
for the most part, like I didn't have everybody down until the end of the film, and I verified it on IMDb afterwards. I had to. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, so I'll correct you. Don't worry about that. Yeah. Oh my god. Oh, I just keep thinking about that. So, for the record, there is only one instance of sex, and that's in the middle of the film.
Yes.
And pretty good sex scene for it not being like no intimacy coordinators back then or anything, and you get a close-up of Kevin Bacon's butt.
Yeah, you get some Kevin butt.
Yeah.
Some bacon butt.
Or fatback.
Yes. And so who is he with? Which girl is that?
So Jack, that's Kevin Bacon's character. He is dating Marcy. And at the beginning of the movie, they're the only couple.
Right. Yes. So yes, they have a nice little sex scene in the rain. Well, I mean, it's raining outside, and they're just in a cabin. But that's where you get to see a little boob.
Yeah, just one.
Just the one boob.
Boob count in this one. Spoiler for boob count. It's one boob, and it's Marcy's left boob.
My left boob. Yeah, that's it. That's all you get. You get a little bit of her butt. Mm-hmm. Not a lot, not even a whole butt, just a little bit of her butt, a bit more of Kevin's butt.
Yeah.
And then her one left boob.
Yeah. So let's go back. Let's talk about I was just
skipped ahead a bit.
We did, but I wanted things to be flow a bit with the
organic
sex thing. Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, so we start with the two teens in 1958, and very similar to how Halloween did it. Mrs. Voorhees is 90% POV shots.
Yeah.
In this, very rarely is she like we're looking at her in third person.
Yeah, I mean, really, just at the end of the movie, right? With Alice.
Yeah,
is really all that we get.
Right. Mm-hmm. And if she is supposed to be in third person, she is immediately obscured. Like she's behind the bathroom curtain. She's blocking her face out with the flashlight. It's very well done. Keeping her as a surprise
was fun.
Just stellar.
One thing I will say that I think Halloween did better, though, is that it was Halloween, I think, used better camera equipment overall. Mm-hmm. And so in Friday the 13th, sometimes I wasn't sure if what I was watching was supposed to be a POV shot or if it was just somebody holding the camera.
No, I completely agree with that.
Which is confusing sometimes.
Yeah.
Not enough to where you get lost. It's not a very complicated story.
Right.
But still.
So let's talk about Annie's introduction.
Okay.
Because unlike a lot of first kills in the slasher movies, she gets a decent amount of screen time and story.
She's not the first kill. She's the third kill.
No, I'm sorry. You know what I mean, though, in present time. Okay?
All right. I'm just checking.
All right. I thought you were going.
No, you're good. Go right ahead.
Okay, so screen time for Annie. She is hitchhiking. Why? Like they say it's at least 20 miles. We have no idea how far she's coming from. She has this giant pack. Like what? You don't know one person with a car, lady?
It does kind of beg the question, how is anybody else, they're supposed to open this camp in 2 weeks. How are the kids getting there?
Yeah.
If there's no bus that goes there, are the parents physically driving there? So then how come she can't get a ride there? It's very unclear.
Absolutely. She has very little explained about what she's doing.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
But she gets halfway of that 20 miles with this trucker guy who she meets at the diner.
Unnecessarily touches her butt to put her in the truck.
Yeah.
I made a comment. Like,
you
I
did.
physically opened my mouth and was like, ew.
He also calls her, I think he calls her a pretty thing, something like that.
He says something like, are all the kids at the camp gonna be as pretty as you?
You're right.
That's so weird. What are you doing?
Well, because he's clearly supposed to be like in his 40s or 50s.
Yeah.
And she's supposed to be like a late teens teenager.
16, 17,
right?
18. Like in those 3 years. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
so not great.
But then we get introduced to Ralph, who is our red herring.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
oh, wait, what do you mean? You think we were supposed to think he was the killer?
Yeah.
Oh, that never crossed my mind.
And it didn't cross my mind either. I thought that they were doing like the whole, crazy guy is the trope. Because later on, they have the cops stop at Camp Crystal Lake and say like, oh, we're looking for Ralph. And
that's interesting. I never took it that. So I guess we didn't really say. Had you ever seen this before?
Oh, God. I can't tell you if I've seen this before because I never remember watching the whole thing at once. This is one of those movies that was just on sometimes. And so I'd seen a couple of the deaths a few times. I'd seen, this is talked a lot about in special effects makeup and videos and tutorials and documentaries on that I've seen a good chunk of. So I don't know if before this I had sat down and seen it in its entirety.
So that's totally fair. Before I tell my background with it, I just want to call out the special effects bit. Part of why the special effects are talked about as positively as they are is one of the very first people brought onto the production was Tom Savini, who was known for his incredible work on 1978's Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
So that was a big deal.
I have a lot to say about Tom Savini. He is a special effects master, and he is the ideal, jack of all trades kind of thing. He was Kevin Smith before Kevin Smith was Kevin Smith, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Just in the sense that, he met everybody. Everybody liked him and wanted to put him in his projects, wanted him to work on it. So he not only did makeup for these movies, but he would appear as extras if they needed him. He would do bit roles. He would produce or direct some things, all because Savini was just, he hasn't passed or anything, but at the beginning of his career, he was just a very likable guy. Everybody wanted to be around him, and he still has that really cool, charming personality, and he's just been top tier friend in Hollywood. Yeah. He's a go-to horror icon.
Very cool. Yeah, he did help with some of the stunt work in this one, like the archery scene and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think you see his hand in one of the scenes.
Oh, that's fun.
I think if I remember right, his hand is the one that kills the snake.
Nice.
Which, by the way, was a real snake. They actually killed a real snake in this movie, so they don't get to put that no animals were harmed in the making of. Ooh. They can't do that in this one.
Sad.
So, yeah.
I was actually going to ask if you looked that up or not.
I did. I was curious.
I forgot to look it up.
Yeah, that whole scene is very interesting because the scene was unscripted.
Yeah.
They came up with it on the spot because while they were there, they actually found a snake and stuff.
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
They were like, hey, what if that happened kind of thing. So it was an in the moment unscripted concept. But yeah, Savini would continue to work on the franchise in different capacities. He even worked on the video game a bit and stuff like that. So my background with the movie though is I told a story in episode 1 about when I watched Halloween. Well, that same night I also watched Friday the 13th parts 1 and 2.
Nice.
So we did all 3 of those. And so that was the first and only time I saw this movie. So I remembered the big twist reveal at the end. but that was kind of it. Like, I remembered bits and pieces of the camp and everything, but that was kind of all I remembered. So having Annie die the way that she does was really surprising to me, because I think that, you know, I wasn't really focused on Ralph. Ralph being, you know, was just kind of, to me, was the guy who, like, he's trying to save everybody, but nobody believes him because he's like, you know, the town weirdo or whatever, right? But the Annie thing, like, really caught me off guard, because as soon as she gets in the Jeep's going really fast.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm like, man, like, why are they having the Jeep go so fast? Like, not realizing yet, like, what was to come.
Well, the Jeep was actually really clever, too, because Steve, the guy who hired them all there, he's part of the family that owns this camp. He's also driving a teal Jeep. And I can't imagine there were a lot of teal Jeeps. There's not a lot now. So the fact that, you know, the killer's driving one too, and it's a completely different Jeep. I did check for, like, different things on it to, you know, just continuity and whatnot. But the main thing is it had a black covering on top of it, whereas Steve's did not. But
well, flip that.
Flip it?
Yeah, flips. So
okay,
Steve's had the soft, because remember, he's driving in the rain.
Yeah.
And everything. So he has the soft top. But it was actually the same Jeep from a production perspective. They just tweaked it between the two.
I figured they weren't going to buy two Jeeps unless they had to wreck one at some point.
I mean, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it worked on me, though, because there was one shot where I was like, isn't that Steve's Jeep? I was like, and I was like, is Steve involved? I don't remember Steve being involved. And
right.
He's not, you know.
No,
but
he's mostly off camera this whole movie.
Yeah. They do have to show him, though, later to kind of, like, let the audience know that he's not a suspect, right?
Yeah.
You know. I do have some problems with that from a timeline perspective.
That's fair.
Because before he leaves the camp, he says that he should be back after lunch.
Yeah.
But he clearly doesn't come back until pretty late at night.
Well, and the rain isn't even a thing until after it's dark.
Yeah, so, like, I don't really know, like, the timeline, like, I mean, I guess you could be pedantic and semantic and be like, well, I mean, you know, dinner is after lunch, you know, 10 p.m. is after lunch, but that's not what that sentence means.
No, I would assume, hey, Derek, you're running out. Are you going to be home after lunch?
You mean like 1, 2 o'clock?
Yeah.
You know, right? Not 10 p.m., right? So I was a little confused at first. And I was like, is the storm so bad that it looks like it's midnight? That doesn't seem right.
No. But it got dark prior to that.
Yeah.
So that doesn't work.
It doesn't. No, the timeline's a little off, I think.
I do appreciate that these teens are relatively good employees.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't take too much time off at the little lake. They worked.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, they're fairly responsible kids,
right?
It wasn't like they were trashing the place. They weren't, like, doing really unsafe stuff. Yeah, I guess they smoked a little pot, but it was, you know, also 1980. Yeah. So, like, I don't know. There's
no television.
There's no television, yeah.
Come on, guys.
They barely had electricity. They have a gas generator for their electricity, you know, so.
And all of them are in relatively good shape. Like, all the guys are wearing these Speedos, and all these girls are wearing, like, teeny tiny bikinis, and still only 2 people hook up, and they were the monogamous couple
right
at the beginning. Like, this could have been like, oh no, all these new people, I'm gonna go and leave you all here to yourselves, goodbye. Like, they could have blown off work and had, like, this teenage sex fest, and they didn't.
They did try to play strip Monopoly, though.
Yeah, you have thoughts on that, don't you?
Well, look, I love Monopoly. There was a summer I spent with one of my brothers playing Monopoly into the ground, and I don't understand how that would work with the varying costs of rent depending on which properties you have. Right? So let's say you're playing the game. Let's say you've already lost your shoes, you've lost your socks, right? And you've got, you know, just pants, shirt, and underwear. And, but at that point, if you land on Boardwalk or you land on Baltic Avenue, you're losing the same kind of article of clothing. You're losing your shirt or your pants, right? So how do you differentiate the cheapest property on the board with the most expensive property on the board?
Well, they still had the money. So at that point, I guess that you give up the money.
It looked like they were only using the money to purchase the properties.
Yeah, I don't know.
So it doesn't really work for me.
Brenda, your game is crap. We need rules.
But it did surprise me, though, that it doesn't really get very far. The guy loses his shirt.
The guy loses his shirt, and Brenda's in her bra and panties. So, at some point...
She lost some stuff.
She lost some clothes.
But that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. They stop right as Alice was going to take off her shirt.
Yeah. So, I expected that to go farther, given, the genre. But,
right.
But, yeah, this movie was, from that perspective, fairly tame.
See, you sat here and you, poked holes in all of the basic rules. I was just really pissed that Brenda threw the dice first. It was a 2 and a 1, and she's like, ooh, double sixes. No, you're a liar, Brenda. You are a damn liar. That is a 3. You don't get to go again.
She moved 12. She counted it up. That was really funny, because they could have easily had the roll go off camera.
Yeah.
Or behind something. She could have had something sitting on the table. But instead, they are right there in the forefront of the screen, and it's clearly not sixes. That is the most unbelievable part of the movie there. Is strip Monopoly. That's it. That's where the movie falls apart.
I totally believe that there are some serial killers in the woods. Not all the woods. There's a lot of woods.
There's a lot of woods.
There's a lot of woods. But,
thank you for listening to Love and Slashers.
There's a lot of woods.
There's a lot of woods. God. Okay, so Annie dies.
Annie has a really brutal kind of death, and she kind of begins that whole trope of being injured and slowly
the limping away.
Yeah. We saw Laurie in Halloween get injured and have to limp away too, but she's our final girl, so she makes it out.
Right.
But Annie does not. They immediately took how Halloween ended. They opened their present day portion of the movie with that, and they kill her off. And they start her off she pets a dog. That's usually a very good sign for our hero. She is as innocent as they come. She believes in everybody's goodness, and she just wants to go cook for some kids.
But I think that in and of itself is kind of proof that wasn't what they were trying to do. They weren't trying to do the sinner thing with this movie, right? Yeah, some of the kids are fooling around, but most are not.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's really key. And to your point about Halloween, so Victor Miller, the lead writer on this, he was trying to rip off Halloween.
Yeah.
Straight up. It's so much so that he wanted to get Irwin Yablans on board, the executive producer of Halloween. And Irwin didn't want to do another horror film.
Sure.
Yet. Because he goes on to do a ton of other horror films, including multiple Halloween movies and all of that. But at the time, he wasn't ready.
Once you have a cash cow, other people want in on it. When Superman was created and sold a ton of stuff, there were a ton of copycats that immediately came out. Shazam is one of the biggest ones because ones that we still know about. Because
you mean Captain Marvel?
Well, yeah. But DC didn't fight back with their lawyers. They just bought the company and the characters. They snatched them up and they used what they could. Green Arrow was a huge copy of Batman, and they just grabbed him. And
totally.
So I find that really at least enjoyable and genuine when people honestly are yeah, I was trying to jump on this train or ride these coattails, whatever metaphor you want. When they're honest about it, it's so much better.
Yeah. No, straight up, that was the goal. was to capitalize on that for sure.
Well, I appreciate the twists and turns that they took.
Yeah, I mean, it's clearly a different movie.
Yeah.
Right? There are some other things that are similar to it, some of which are not actually even intentional.
Right.
For example, the character of Bill is played by Harry Crosby, who is Bing Crosby's son.
Oh, okay.
But when he was cast, it had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Even though there's that parallel with Jamie Lee Curtis in Halloween, they did realize after the casting, they were like, well, we can capitalize on this, and so we already casted him, we might as well.
Sure.
But that wasn't the original goal.
Yeah, I can't, like, as much as I can imagine Janet Leigh and Tony Curtis, like, vouching for their daughter a bunch of times, I cannot picture Bing Crosby, star of White Christmas, saying to his son, yeah, do this slasher film.
Yeah. Well, and supposedly Harry Crosby was really trying to not bring his father into, he really wanted to do it on his own, to his credit, and it kind of came out later who his dad was. So, but yeah, that was kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of cool casting stuff about this. For example, the role of Alice was actually originally offered to Sally Field.
Nice. She was way too, like, bubbly and innocent at that time. Like, she
turned it down.
Yeah.
So she didn't want to do it.
She was a second Gidget actress, and she did Flying Nun. Like, no way you were going to get her in a slasher film. Not going to happen.
So then, okay, so we get to camp, right? Nobody knows where their cook is. We know where
they just
the cook
assume
is,
that,
but...
like, she didn't show up, that she bailed. And because cell phones aren't a thing, and they have very limited power at the camp at this point, they're not going to get a message. They're like, yeah, she blew us off.
Yeah, and we get introduced to Steve, who's a little short with these kids who, like, seem to be very helpful and wanting to do a good job.
And why the hell is he touching Alice's face like that? Like,
oh, so, okay, so they're supposed to be in a relationship. Like, or they were. That's why he says, like, give me another chance, right? They're kind of on the outs, but they were romantically involved.
Well, he looks 45 and she looks 17.
I mean... I didn't check any of their ages. I probably should have. But she, to me, looked older than the other kids who showed up. The ones who showed up. She seemed older than them.
Okay.
Not as old as Steve, but not like a teenager.
I thought, like, she and Bill looked like about the same age, whereas Steve looked much older.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. But they were supposed to be romantically involved. And I guess it's worth noting for anybody out there who's, like, a really big fan of this movie. We watched the uncut version of the film that was released on DVD. We bought this big box set of 8 movies, and it's the uncut version. I should have looked up what the difference is between that and the theatrical. I meant to do that, but I got lost in a sea of Fright Facts and totally forgot until this very moment.
Okay, so basically what you're saying is if there is a storyline where they were romantically involved, it was not filmed.
It was not ever really
finished. Otherwise, it would have been in our cut.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think it's really, I would say, more than implied, because there's that whole scene where they're working on the gutters, right, where he's trying to get her to stay, and he says, "Give me another chance," right, and then he does brush the hair away from her cheek. I think that is very clear to me that at some point they are involved. And she's not just an employee.
Fair enough.
So, and later when Mrs. Voorhees is trying to, to trick, and well, she says the Christies, but either way, I still think it's more than implied that they're in a relationship.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so, he's got to go into town or whatever. I forget why. And,
he's getting extra paint and paint thinner and a few other things.
And so the kids are kind of left to their own devices. They go swimming. One of them pretends to drown so he can make out with somebody.
God, what a horrible...
Well, the thing for that was it made me kind of question, like, well, how did the guy know that, like, Kevin Bacon wasn't gonna, like, give him mouth to mouth, right? I forget, like, was that Ned or Bill?
Ned was the guy who was joking around the entire time.
So I don't know why, like, well, how did he know that Jack wasn't going to do it or Bill wasn't going to do it, right? How did he know one of the chicks was going to do it?
Yeah.
Right? It was like a 50-50 shot, you know? But I guess he got lucky, you know? So that happens, you know? And then, the storm starts rolling and kids start dropping like flies really quick. I would say...
the kills are really close back to back.
But because this movie, and I'm not trying to be insulting with this, it's just kind of a difference. This movie doesn't have anywhere near as much of a narrative around it as Halloween does.
This, so to interrupt for just a second and go back, I looked at what the R-rated and what the uncut version is. Basically, there were 4 scenes that had to be cut down to get the R rating and not the X or NC-17. And it was Annie getting her throat slit.
Okay.
The sex scene, the Jack's neck and all the blood coming out when he was stabbed. And when Marcy has her head bashed in with the axe. Yeah. All those scenes in the version we saw were slightly longer, meaning there were more blood, more nudity-esque kind of things.
Well, now I really kind of want to compare it and watch the R-rated version because those death scenes are pretty important. Otherwise, it could be very ambiguous if those people actually died.
Yeah.
So that's very interesting. Now I kind of want to do a comparison.
I mean, that's the thing that I've learned from horror, both in, television and film, that if you don't see a body, that person may not be dead.
Right.
And so when Ned goes off and he follows the shadow, then, we can assume he's probably dead since we saw that horrible murder of Annie.
Right. But we don't know till much later. But we don't know.
And again, this is one of those things where it doesn't really work with cell phones because they could just text Ned, be like, "Hey man, where are you?" And
but I think a lot of camps could be put in a remote location where nobody's got service.
That's true,
right? Because you and I have been plenty of places where we don't have service.
I mean, that's true.
Messages aren't going through or whatever.
Yeah. Okay.
Going back to the cut thing though, it is important to note that the MPAA was actually kind of pissed about this movie.
Yeah.
And in retrospect, thought that they were even too lenient on it, and so they've kind of forced the franchise to scale back. So in part 2, which we'll watch soon, that one actually has less gore because the MPAA was so mad.
If you have time, go down a rabbit hole and look up the MPAA. They are basically like a entire room of Karens that run like an HOA over films. Their rules change arbitrarily. If one movie gets a PG rating, but the same movie over here has the same exact stuff, it gets a G rating for some reason. Like, people will lose their damn minds, and there is just no explanation. They also have like this, Freemason kind of secrecy around it. Like, they can't tell people who they are and what their job is.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of the rules, to your point, are just extremely subjective. Like, some are objective. Like, you get one F word in PG-13. If you do more than one, it's R. Right? Some of it's very objective, but most of it is subjective stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Which
is why those scenes just had to be trimmed a bit.
Yeah. Well, I mean, some of that stuff gets really kind of arbitrary, so just kind of a fun little tangent here. So I'm a huge Trekkie, for those who don't know me.
He is.
Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country, has a lot of Klingon blood in it. And Klingon blood is purple, or whatever color it is.
Because the MPAA does not care about different colors.
If they had kept the blood red, they were going to get an R rating.
Star Trek with an R.
And Star Trek at the time didn't even do PG-13.
Yeah.
They were all PG. It wasn't until First Contact that they edged into PG-13. And so they were like, well, we can't have an R rating in a Star Trek movie. That's ridiculous. So they changed the color of the blood from red to purple just to get a PG rating. Because for some reason, purple blood, that's fine. Because it's aliens, so nobody cares.
Yeah.
Right? So I just thought that was interesting. It's kind of like how in the Ninja Turtles cartoon, like it's for kids and it's okay because the Foot are robots. They're not people.
Absolutely. Small differences like that really seem silly to me.
It as an adult, definitely.
Yeah.
100%.
So unlike Michael Myers, who literally stalks these kids, or really Laurie, Mrs. Voorhees is like luring them out. Like she's not doing as much of the work as Michael did. Not a lot of reconnaissance. Like she appears in the window to get Ned's attention. Mm-hmm. She makes noises and the cry for help to get Brenda out there. You know, so she is like fishing for these teenagers.
Well, I think it's for two key reasons. Mm-hmm. One, I think she is exploiting that the kids are there to take care of the camp, right? And the kids are, like we said earlier, trying to do a good job.
They are pretty responsible. Right? Yeah.
Versus Mike Myers, he's just in this neighborhood, and the kids are going to be a lot less likely to, like, go into the murder house. Right. Because it's not their... Right.
At no point do they. They're like, ew, no.
They never do. The other thing is that Mike Myers is like this, like, very big, physically strong guy, right? Who can pick up, I forget the male character, was it Bill Bob? Could pick
Bill
up
Bob.
Bill Bob, just Bob. He's just Bob. Bob to his friends. He picks up Bob, by his throat, right? And like, stabs him into the door, right? This is a physically strong person.
Right.
Whereas Mrs. Voorhees is a 50-something-year-old, smaller woman who can't necessarily overpower, say, Kevin Bacon.
Which is why some of these kills are a little weird for me.
Yeah. There are some logistics that don't work, because there's also some shots that, to me, are clearly not her.
Yeah.
Right? It's
very clear.
Right?
Very clear. So Ned dies off screen.
Yeah.
And we don't know about it. It's not confirmed until Jack and Marcy are already engaging in coitus. But through that time, they had been hanging out with their friends. They had they did all that walking back to their own personal cabin, or
they looked at the lake for a while before the rain came in, and stuff. Yeah, they
were having their time together, and they checked out the generator at some point. Like it was a whole thing. Ned was gone for hours.
Yeah, that's the problem with time here, right? Yeah. Because it's very unclear. There's no clocks. You never see a clock. Like, at least not up close enough to tell what time it is at any point, right?
That's fair.
So all we know is, like, it's daytime when the movie begins, when present day 1980 begins, and we know that when it's raining, it's nighttime. That's really all we know.
So, to go back to my point of hours, that means Voorhees stayed in that cabin for hours. Mm-hmm. And that means she laid under that bed and listened to these kids have sex essentially on top of her.
Yeah, I mean,
what a pervert.
I don't have as much a problem with that last bit because she didn't want to get caught and overpowered by two people. But why did she stay in there the whole time is my question.
Thank you.
Because she has no way of knowing that they're coming in there unless, like, is that where the three of them were staying? Does she know that? Like,
right.
That was a little unclear to me, because he only goes in there because he saw somebody. So it wasn't implied that he wanted to be in there.
Yeah.
Right? So how did she know anybody was going to follow?
Right.
Right? So that part's a little weird.
I mean, it would make sense if that is Jack and Marcy's cabin, because they were fairly close to it, looking out at the lake earlier.
Yeah, but even that, it was implied that they were just, like, trying to find a spot.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Get out of the rain.
Like, I think they were, I don't know. I think they were not as spread out.
Yeah.
You know, where they were actually staying. So that part's a little funky for me personally. The way she kills Jack, Kevin Bacon's character, I thought was really interesting. So I'm curious, again, to kind of see what that looks like in the rated R version.
Like I said, it was just smaller, shorter. There was less focus on the blood and the arrow tip. So
maybe it was just like shot through and that was the end of the scene.
Right.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, the cool part, I thought, what makes this kill really unique is the fact that he finally notices something's wrong, because a drop of blood hits him on the forehead, but before he can get up and investigate or anything, that's when she does it. And that's really cool. That's against, like, most of the tropes. Like, in other movies, they would have found that body and had that confirmed. Like, poor Laurie Strode in Halloween, she came in and found all three of her friends dead in a matter of seconds.
That does kind of happen later, though.
It does.
To Alice.
It does.
But
there are a couple bodies that have been staged to scare and, for jump scares.
Yeah, I mean, I really... Like, just comparing the two movies, Halloween is a much stronger film, I think, overall, just as a movie. This one, I think, is more popcorny. I think there's just less going on. But I do think there's some, like, convenience issues. So to your point, like, maybe this scene goes against trope or expectation, but I also think it's a little convenient, though, because nothing drips on them during the sex scene, but the extra 90 seconds since the sex scene was enough for the blood that's been there for hours to finally drip through. And then, how does she know exactly how he's laying on that to get his throat perfectly? Like, I don't know, some of it, because then it becomes, well, is she like a trained assassin, or is she just a mother who went crazy? It
does come across like between 1958 and 1980, she killed some other people or something. Maybe not in this little city. Maybe not at Camp Crystal Lake.
But the movie doesn't tell you that. It just says that she killed those two in 1958, right? And then she probably was the one who poisoned the water. Late when they tried to reopen the camp, they said that the water was bad.
Yeah.
Right? She probably poisoned the water, right? But there's nothing else there saying, that,
no,
right?
No, there's nothing implying that other than the behavior as a killer. And the way she kills a few.
I think I need that, though, because
that's fair.
Like, even Mike Myers, like, he doesn't kill anybody in a clever way. He just overpowers everybody, right? Yeah. She's very clever about it. Right? Knowing exactly where to put that arrow through in the bed. And having, by the way, the strength to shove it through a mattress and through his neck. Yeah. Right? That takes a good amount of force where she can't, like, how is she even doing that from under a bed?
And it's one-handed because she has her other hand on his forehead, keeping him still.
So it's just like, that's a lot. That's a bit of a leap, right? She's also, I guess, an archery expert. Because she clearly kills one of the women.
Brenda.
Is it Brenda that she kills at the archery range? Right? So she's an expert archery person. And then the guy who goes to fix the generator. Bill. She gets him up off the ground onto the door.
Yeah.
Right?
So I talked about how freakishly strong at a minimum Mrs. Voorhees is, because she had enough strength to pick this grown man up, attach him to the wall, and put 3 to 4 arrows in him.
Well, and she threw she threw
Brenda
through the window.
Brenda's body through a window, just heaves it.
You know, like that's very strong. That is Mike Myers level strength.
It goes back to the superhuman serial killer trope.
But the thing is that the other slashers aren't quite human.
No.
She's supposed to be.
Right.
Right? So I think that's where I run into some issues, is Mike Myers is painted throughout the movie as being pure evil, as being not quite human.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's like the conceit of the movie that you have to just accept, right? Is that he's maybe not quite human, that maybe he's a part demon or something. She's just supposed to be a mom who lost her kid and went crazy. That doesn't give her the ability to necessarily like do these things.
Right.
So it loses me a bit. Whereas, like, you know, Freddy, of course, is very supernatural. Right? Chucky is very supernatural. Right? Yeah. She's not supposed to be.
Right.
Jason is later, right? But Mrs. Voorhees is supposed to just be a mom. In her 50s, by the way.
So that brings me to one of my biggest complaints. This movie, this may be like a hot take or something, I don't know.
Okay.
This movie probably would have fallen into obscurity because it is kind of trash. The lines are just bad, and the cuts, the acting, the editing, it's just not as good as Halloween was. It just kind of fails in most comparisons. There are two reasons why this movie succeeded.
Okay.
Tom Savini, his special effects, the way he did the kills, the way he was able to show everything. Like, for the most part, these kids die on screen. And
yeah, they do.
We get to see a lot of it. We get to see the axe to the head. We get to see the throat slit on Annie. We get to see Alice.
Arrow.
Yeah, the arrow through Kevin Bacon, through Jack's neck. We get to see Alice cut off Mrs. Voorhees' head.
Yeah.
These are...
really, the only thing we don't see is Brenda getting shot at the archery range.
Well, we don't see Ned.
Well, we see him pinned up to the door all bloody.
No, that's Bill.
That's Bill.
Yeah, so we don't actually see three
Ned,
people die. We see 4 bodies later in different special effects things that are all completely different from each other.
Yeah.
Brenda has now been like completely bound. She has glass in her face from the window, so that dummy looks really incredible.
Do you think it was a dummy? Because I thought she was breathing.
Oh, maybe. I tend to not look at that because that's not really fair for the actors, you know.
Well, I don't normally notice it. I just kind of noticed it. So I think it was really her.
Oh,
but
absolutely could have been.
Yeah.
And I mean, we see Steve's body just hanging with a knife in his stomach. We see...
Which was very reminiscent, by the way, of the scene in Halloween where Jamie Lee Curtis finds all of her friends.
Absolutely.
Right, and Bob comes out, flings down. It just reminded me
I mean,
of that.
when you look at it, Alice only finds 3 people.
Yeah.
And there are clearly other bodies around here.
Mm-hmm.
So, poor girl. So, Tom Savini's work is just absolutely incredible. People saw that and they were like, yes, like that's gore. They really believe these kids were getting hurt. They could immerse themselves even more. And then the other reason is Betsy Palmer. That was the first time that the killer reveal was such a fun cameo. Mm-hmm. Because the adults at this point had seen her when they were a kid in, movies with Jackie Gleason, where she's such a nice girl next door, wonderful, doughy angel person. And here she is, like, she walks on screen, she embraces Alice. She's like, oh, I'm a friend of the Christies. And
the turn is good.
Yeah, it is awesome.
Yeah.
And we've seen that now so many times, like where an actor goes against their typecast to, prove a point.
Jeff Bridges in Iron Man.
Throws people off. Yeah, that twist was really great.
Right.
When Daniel Radcliffe did Swiss Army Man, right?
Yeah.
Like that that was pretty phenomenal.
That's fair. Yeah.
So it works. An actor's reputation works, and I think those two things set this movie apart from just being another by the book slasher film in the slasher golden age.
I think that's fair. And I do think that the end of the movie, when she shows up in the Jeep, I think from that point forward, I think that is all very strong from that point forward, when it's really just her and Alice.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's all really good. I just think that some of the middle portion doesn't quite work out logistically at times. And it's a very light story. Like, this movie is actually a couple of minutes longer than Halloween, but somehow Halloween packs in a lot more narrative, exposition, history, character development, than this does, which is just kind
of
it's interesting.
Right?
Yeah.
It shows you where people's priorities are.
Mm-hmm.
And their priority was on the body count. This has 9 kills in it total. 10 if you actually count Jason, because we do see in flashback in her mind's eye her son drown.
Right.
So, 10 there.
Well, actually, in fact, Betsy Palmer has been quoted to basically say that she doesn't really understand who the guy in the hockey mask is supposed to be because her son drowned.
Right.
So
Absolutely.
She's very much kind of staying in character, when she answers those questions.
And I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm totally.
So
that's always, it's much more fun when the actors are like playing along with it, so.
But yeah, there's 10. Voorhees killed 9 people. That we see in the film. Michael only killed 5, including his sister. Did kill 2 dogs, so he's still more evil in my eyes.
Well, to be fair, the dog he ate, we don't know he killed. Could have already been dead. We don't know for sure.
They said he was still warm, and
yeah, you're right. It does say so. Yeah, no, that's a good point. You're right.
Pretty sure he did it.
No, you're right. That's a good point. So it's interesting that you point out the 10. Because while obviously they were playing off of Halloween and all of that, and they even were playing off some other movies, so the big jump scare at the end when Alice is in the rowboat or whatever, and Jason comes out of the water, right? Yeah, I mean, it's not a great scene, but they were straight up ripping off Carrie, the end of Carrie.
Oh, that's fair, when her hand comes out of the grave.
Yes, so like that was, again, like trying to play off of other very successful horror movies.
Sure.
But a lot of people think that this movie was probably more closely related to And Then There Were None.
Okay.
Which is Agatha Christie, and is actually considered a mystery thriller. It's a crime mystery.
I was going to say, Agatha Christie doesn't do like slasher. She does murder mysteries.
But the way the movie is, many actually consider And Then There Were None to be the very first slasher film.
Oh, man. I think just as a fun thing, like down the road, we should watch that.
Maybe we should check that one out.
Yeah.
Just
definitely do it for the podcast. Right? That could be really cool.
So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah,
I've never seen
it,
or anything like that.
And I haven't either.
To me, Halloween was always kind of positioned as the founder of slasher genre. So
like I never considered it the first one or anything, in my head. Psycho came way before that and is a slasher movie, but I guess I
never saw Psycho as a slasher.
Halloween started the movement.
Yeah,
it did. It's got the popularity. It created the whole serial killer fictional characters as these larger than life icons.
How many people die in Psycho?
I'm pretty sure 3.
Is it 3? Okay.
God,
I think to be a slasher, you have to have multiple people get killed by the person.
I agree. I think the slasher has to also be a serial killer. I think there has to be like a weird connection, and a lot of the time the connection is just the people there, the ones that are just, they're all there.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I don't know that I would portray all of the slashers as serial killers necessarily. Some of them, I mean, obviously, like Chucky, right, is obviously, he was, but I don't know. I don't know if, like, is Freddy a serial killer? I mean, maybe that's a question for a Freddy, a Nightmare on Elm Street episode, but
yeah,
which
is the next episode.
Which is next, yeah, that's true. So yeah, so the movie ends with Alice finally chopping off Mrs. Voorhees' head, which is interesting because, and I don't really remember part 2 because I haven't seen it since I was in middle school. But she's in part 2.
She is.
So that must be a flashback, I guess, or something. But
or
her head is laying around talking.
Resurrection.
But yeah, so she ends up in the lake or whatever, and the Jason child body jumps out of the water, but it must have just been a dream because she wakes up in the hospital. And so that does beg the interesting question of, and this is a question for you.
Oh. Did
Jason really jump out of the water and it just didn't get her? Or was that all a dream?
I feel like it's very possible that it's all a hallucination because of the trauma she had just experienced.
A hallucination or a dream?
No, a hallucination.
Okay. Just
I think because she had clearly been in that canoe for hours.
Oh, yeah.
Without any fresh water, food, and she had just had all this traumatizing events happen. I think it's very possible she had a hallucination.
Fair enough. I thought it was a dream.
That's fair too.
Which is also why, the Jason we come to know is pretty different.
Yeah.
Right? I think that kind of fits in there. But we'll get to that, of course, as we go through the franchise.
Sure, of course.
So
I did want to do a little tidbit on the title Friday the 13th.
Okay.
So there is a few different reasons why we consider Friday the 13th to be such a scary day. It is because of biblical reasons.
Okay.
So Jesus was crucified on a Friday, and it was Judas, the 13th guest at the table, who betrayed him. So that is where it kind of started. After that, all of the Knights of Templar were mass arrested on a Friday the 13th in 1307.
Interesting.
There is some Norse connection. Loki, the god of chaos, is the 13th god.
I do want to go back to the Templar thing, though. I think that is a little funny because 7 is supposed to be like a godly number. Mm-hmm. So that is in 1307, but nobody cares about the 7. I find that interesting.
Right.
That's convenient. It's a conspiracy against us 13ers.
Well,
I was born on a Friday the 13th.
You were, yes.
Yeah.
A lot of people are still very superstitious about it. Like, it really freaks them out. So they will avoid all kinds of other stuff. There's still a huge problem in our country where people are very violent towards black cats.
Sure.
Or they will purposely put them up for adoption around Friday the 13th or Halloween's.
I mean, a lot of buildings won't have a 13th floor. Mm-hmm. Mitch Hedberg, the comedian, he had a joke about how, but the people on the 14th floor, you know what floor you're really on.
Exactly. That is one thing I look at anytime I go into a building with like a lot of stories. I'm like, do they have a 13th? Because it was one of the first things I noticed as a kid. You get excited, you want to push the button yourself, and you're like, where the fuck is 13?
Yeah, that's interesting.
You're like, Sesame Street would be appalled with your counting abilities.
Now I'm going down like all these tangents and stuff in my head. But
I just thought this was a fun thing that, now because it became a franchise, it's less scary. They turned it back around, and it's associated more with the franchise now than just with a eerie superstition.
Mm-hmm.
And I appreciate that. They took the stupidity out of it.
Well, I wanted to have like a horror themed birthday for my last birthday that was on a Friday the 13th, but nobody really seemed that into the idea. But I think next time I'm just gonna force the issue.
Just do it.
You know, especially now that we've got this going on. So
our love for each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. I didn't mean the podcast.
No.
I meant our loving relationship.
To you, it's all one and the same.
I mean, really, like, what is a marriage without a podcast?
It's not real unless you're podcasting it.
I mean, that's what I've always said.
I know.
Yeah. What else you got?
That was it. I just wanted to look through the background of Friday the 13th, you know, the superstition of it all.
Very cool. Well, that's all my fright facts. There's a couple other fright facts I guess I could throw out here to people who are interested. Overall, the movie took 28 days to shoot.
Not bad.
And it was kind of a big year for horror. Several other horror movies came out, but two really big ones were The Shining and The Fog.
Ooh.
Both came out in 1980. So there was some big competition there for sure. And then all of the female actors, when they were auditioning, they all had to perform the Raining Blood Nightmare monologue from the movie. So they all had to perform that, which I thought was kind of interesting. And most of these people, obviously not all, but most of them were actually Broadway stars.
Clever.
That's
really fun.
Yeah, and the movie premiered at a Broadway theater house. Kind of, in honor of that, which I thought was pretty neat.
I like it.
So there you go. Harry Manfredini was the composer. He did all the music on the film, and the voice, the kind of like hush voice, it was him as well. He also did the voice work.
I was gonna say that is very iconic. Like, it doesn't have a theme the way that Halloween does, but
that's what it is. That is the theme,
right.
Which I think it's not necessarily as iconic as Halloween's, but I do think is very noticeable. People recognize it quite a bit. So there you go. I think that's all of my fright facts that I didn't get to cover earlier. I'm sorry. One more for people who really like the deep cuts. So Willie Adams was a production assistant on the movie, but he also played the guy in 1958 who gets killed.
Aww.
So he gets to be the very first death in Friday the 13th.
Good for him.
Immortalized there. So there you go. That's it.
I love it.
That's
okay.
Those are all my fright facts. That was the final fright fact.
I like it. Yeah. I mean, I guess that kind of wraps it up. I do have a Would You Rather new segment. Would you rather be a camp counselor or a babysitter right now in your life?
A babysitter.
Yeah?
Yeah. I have arachnophobia. I don't want to go to a camp in the woods.
I'd rather be a camp counselor at this point.
Great. You go do that, and I'll watch Bluey with the kiddos and make bagel bites. It'll be fine.
Great answer.
Yeah,
I love it.
I'm good.
He does, by the way. The arachnophobia is for real.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't say that it's like super strong. I've worked on it over the years, but I do not do spiders. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's no. We will not be doing Arachnophobia, the movie, on this show. I've seen it.
No.
I saw it in 4th grade. Had a near-death experience directly after that was totally unrelated, and I will never watch that movie again. So, yeah, I'm good. And
I am not going to reveal phobias to the public. So that's just me.
Fair enough. All right. Friday the 13th, part 1. Anything else?
Alice is a very capable final girl. She does not just make it out because she's the last one. She really fought for her life, and she was pretty clever.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with the exception of how she was trying to handle the door in the main cabin that she was trying to put furniture in front of, because that was just really not very well choreographed.
The rope was all she needed.
The rope was cool.
It was a really great touch. But after she just kept putting more and more stuff, I'm like, she's going to have to go out that door later, isn't she? Like, that
well, because the door opens the other way, so it's not like she's like putting weight in front of the door.
She's
and then
putting obstacles. So if somebody comes through the door, they like have to climb over stuff.
She puts like one chair on it, but it fell off, and then she puts like another one on it. It was like
the exact same spot. And
I was like, you guys didn't like plan this ahead of time. You just told her start stacking things by the door, and she had to just kind of come up with it, which, you know, whatever. But,
look panicked the entire
exactly. Yeah.
The rope was the best part. But
strip Monopoly, it's a thing.
It is.
You can play strip Monopoly or strip Happy Days game.
Friends reference for those. You could just be normal and play strip poker.
You could, but you need a deck of cards. I mean, who's got one of those?
You can make cards.
There you go.
All right, guys, that wraps it for us. Join us next time for Nightmare on Elm Street. This has been Love and Slashers.
We are hosted by Rae and Derrick Mayer.
And produced by Derrico Studios.
The show music is by Levi Kutsky.
The show logo is by Derrick Mayer.
Find all of our links at loveandslashers.com.
Thanks for listening, and keep trying to be that final girl.